So it's an absolute pleasure being here today. I think it's, what Republic TV has done is something amazing because it really goes to showcase India as a nation and bring us on the stage of what generative AI for India can look like, right? And I think we're at a very exciting time. Everyone keeps talking about, okay, is China ahead? Is the US ahead? Is India fallen behind when it comes to areas like generative AI, right? And if you actually go back a bit in history and you see the same was talked about when you talk about digital payments in India. Everyone felt that India's missed the bus on the the digital space, credit card penetration was very low, digital payments was very low. But if you see the data today, right, on Indian networks, on UPI, about 172 billion transactions, right? That's 17,222 crore transactions happened in 2024 alone. And if you take the entire world's global credit card transactions, right, there are about 750 billion transactions, which means 25% of the world's global digital transactions happens on UPI, on Indian networks, for Indian transactions, right? Now that's scale at another level. We came late to the party when it came to UPI and digital transactions, but we became number one very quickly. Today, a lot of countries are adopting that model. And I think the same can happen with generative AI if you all come together, if you guys, if the entire world of Indian teams come together and really build India's next generational foundational models, we can truly be number one.
Yeah, and what's at stake is that number on the screen, right? 1.4 billion lives. Because AI is an assistant for everyone, right? It's for the student, it's for the parliamentarian, it's for the business entrepreneur. So the opportunity that we have as a country to enable each one of these 1.4 billion lives to be 10x, 50x in the next 5 years rests with all of us in this room, rests with all of us across the country who's going to explore this today.
So we thought we'd start with a really interesting thing for everyone on TV as well as everyone in the audience today, right? It's a simple solve, simple puzzle. To start from the left arrow, end up at the right arrow. Just think it through. For people who are live with us today, you can just raise your hand once you solved it. We've done this over multiple countries and stages all over the world. And we've got some very, very interesting results.
Ironically, AI has never been able to solve this one.
So start at the left arrow, end up at the right arrow. We're about 10 seconds in. And I see a lot of interesting people trying to trace the path. Okay, we have someone who says they've solved it. So about 15 seconds, so that's actually quite impressive. But did anyone think of just doing something simpler? Which is, yes, going around, right? Because all I said was that we want to start at the left arrow, end up at the right arrow. I didn't use the word maze. I didn't use the word you have to go through the maze, right? But our minds intuitively, when we see a complex problem that we've done before, moves towards solving the problem in the exact complicated way. So in our session today, what we want to give you is perspectives around first principle solves. And that's what today's generative AI world is going to bring to you, right? It's going to bring to you approaches and opportunities of solving problems that were previously very, very difficult to solve, right? And you might always go to the traditional, more complicated approach. But today we're going to talk about questioning all your assumptions and coming up with new ways of solving using generative AI.
So when it comes to technology, right, we have been underestimated in the past. And what that has led to is that when you look at somewhere in the software world, right, which is the 80s, etc., that time India sort of caught up or sort of just marched along in terms of moving along. And then when it came to the internet revolution, right, we sort of looked at it very differently. We didn't march along, we didn't catch up, but we marched along with the world. And then finally, when it came to the AI revolution, we believe that India can lead this, right? We're not going to simply march along. And what we see is a supportive architecture that can really change the game when it comes to all of this.
So we caught up when it came to software. we really went ahead when it came to the payment space, when it came to the internet. But let's actually go ahead and talk a little about how we will lead in the AI space today, right? So this is a really interesting example, right? At India's scale, today we have someone like an Airtel or that's tied up with Perplexity to say, okay, 400 million users will now have Perplexity Pro access. But the scale that we're talking about, right, the amount of people that will now use technologies like Perplexity Pro, which is just another tool to quickly do deep research at scale, is phenomenally powerful, allowing everyone to now suddenly be like, India is going to be the #1 consumer of AI tech in the world.
And when it comes to how does India consume, right? India will consume very differently from the rest of the world. Unlike monolithic English models or Chinese models, India is a set of diverse languages, like the previous speakers were talking about, 22 languages across the country. And when India wants to interact, it will speak in its own language, right? When we want to make an impact at the farmer level, at the student level, at a very grassroots level, that will happen in Indian languages and with Indian thought processes. And that's what will build trust. That's what will build the ability for someone who's on the other side of the digital divide to go ahead and have a very different kind of interaction, right? Because it's only when you speak in the local dialect, it's only when you can speak and not have to read and not have to sort of do a type on your computer, that's when the experience totally changes. It becomes totally seamless, it becomes totally integrated, and it becomes something that's very revolutionary. And it becomes very accessible as well, right? Because now you're no longer limited to having the internet. It can be a simple phone call on a simple phone number to have that interaction and give that ability, right? Because when it comes to complex things, when it comes to sensitive things like money, you want to have the interaction in the highest form of trust. So I think Abhinav is going to show a demo of this technology in action.
Yeah, so if we can have, perfect, we have it up. And the audio from the HDMI, please, right? That'll be fantastic. So what we want to show is how, interactions of the future within India, and it's already happening, are going to look like. And what we're going to do is we have an AI configured that's going to, talk to me. It's a banking AI, so a customer service banking AI. And we'll see how the future of an Indian service could look like. Hello.
Hello, welcome to Fluid Bank. How can I assist you today?
I wanted to check my credit card balance.
Sure, I can help you with that. Could you please provide your mother's maiden name for authentication?
Actually, my English is not that good. Can you speak in Hindi?
बिल्कुल, मैं हिंदी में बात कर सकती हूँ। आपका क्रेडिट कार्ड बैलेंस चेक करने के लिए कृपया अपनी माँ का पहला नाम बताइए।
उनका नाम है अल्पना।
थैंक यू। और आपका क्रेडिट कार्ड नंबर के आखिरी 4 अंक मुझे दे सकते हैं?
मेरी हिंदी भी इतनी अच्छी नहीं है, आप पंजाबी में बात कर सकते हो?
हाँ जी, बिल्कुल। ਤੁਸੀਂ ਸਾਡੇ क्रेडिट कार्ड नंबर ਦੇ आखिरी 4 डिजिट ਦੱਸ ਸਕਦੇ ਹੋ?
अच्छा, नहीं, पंजाबी भी इतनी अच्छी नहीं है, आप बंगाली में बात करेंगे?
ঠিক আছে, আমি বাংলাতে কথা বলতে পারি। আপনি আপনার ক্রেডিট কার্ড এর
मराठी आती है?
हो, मला मराठी येते। तुम्ही तुमच्या क्रेडिट कार्डचे शेवटचे 4 अंक सांगाल का?
Thank you.
So imagine the banking consumer of tomorrow having this ability, right? You're on a single call, you change the language instantaneously across India's 22 languages and have a conversation about your money the way you want to deal with it. And that allows for 24/7 service in terms of just not doing it for a single consumer, but for millions or billions of consumers across our nation.
And another classic example, right? We keep talking about how India is that space where we're large consumers of generative AI technology, but are we really large producers of generative AI technology? Right? So we wanted to show you an example of how even folks like Warren Buffett, who are very, very pro on AI, have actually worked with Indian companies like Fluid AI to launch AI versions of themselves that you can interact with, right? For financial advice, for thought processes on how to invest. So here's a really quick example of what Warren would say. We have over 10 million users that use Warren to actually do intelligent interactions and actually have a conversation with him. And this is the most popular question that was asked to Warren. So again, just asking the team to ensure that the audio is up, and we'll get Warren to talk to everyone. Just the audio from the presentation.
Invest in yourself.
Yeah. Can you just turn it up a little more?
I see people.
Perfect. I'll
that
just
can
restart
increase
it.
Their potential 50%, 100%, 200% by simply being.
Okay. Here we go.
Warren, what should I invest in?
Invest in yourself. You can't beat it. I see people that can increase their potential.
So
50%,
for those that can't hear the
100%,
audio, I can actually speak through what Warren said. So the question asked was, Warren, what should I invest in?
Terrified of public.
And he said that you should invest in yourself. He actually goes on to regale a beautiful story of about how he spent $100 on a Dale Carnegie course. And he was not a good speaker, right? He would be very nervous. And today he's become one of the best orators in the world. He went on to propose to his wife. And that kind of interaction, right, the ability to talk to Warren and have a one-on-one conversation and get inspired by him, that's truly what AI is enabling globally in an amazing way.
And just imagine, right, every student doesn't need to necessarily learn from just his own teachers. You now have the opportunity with AI and avatars like we created for Warren to create specialist avatars of the best in their fields, right? Imagine learning sports from the cricket gurus. Imagine learning science from the best in the field. And we democratize that access, right? We create these AI avatars of their knowledge, of their various interviews, the books they've written, and have people actually ask the right question at the right time and get that visual kind of feedback. So one disheartening fact, right? We've read this all over, that India has just one doctor for every 1,500 people. And in rural areas, this is dropping to 1 in 10,000. But this now, I think, is a massive change is going to come about, right? I remember in a conference in 2020 when someone asked me, what's the one area AI will not reach? And I said that may be mental health, because I thought that's a very human-to-human connect. But ironically, and I don't know whether many of you know this in the room, the number one use case of ChatGPT globally now is not content creation. It's not scientific research. It is therapy. So what this gives us an opportunity, obviously, is to allow all those Indian people who don't have access to mental health care professionals, who don't have access to the questions they need when they get a simple flu or a simple disease, to give AI at scale to them to answer those medical questions at their time of need.
Absolutely. And to know how well ChatGPT knows you, right, for those that use it on a daily basis, just go and ask it one question, right? So just open a new chat and ask it, hey, tell me something about myself that you think nobody else knows or very few people will know, personal things about myself. And you'll be surprised to know the quality of that answer when it comes. If you're a decent user, right, if you've used it over the last 6 months, a couple of interesting times, the in-depth understanding it has about you as a person, your likes, your dislikes, your preferences, you'll be amazed. So something I'd recommend everyone go and try this. You'll get a little spooked as well if you're a big user of the platform.
But it's not just as a consumer, right? We have our very own startups, right out of Bombay, Cure AI, which is using AI to analyze over 100,000 scans. That's 100,000 scans of complex information which would require a radiologist with high accuracy, doing it not just in India, but across 90 countries globally, to get that kind of information out. So now you don't need a radiologist to study each and every scan. It's obviously assisting the radiologist, but it's doing this at scale much faster.
And it's not just in areas like healthcare, finance, marketing. We talk a lot about these industries, but manufacturing too is becoming a very, very strong hub for generative AI. Right? We've seen India's factories are getting digitally powered in a very, very smart way. And that's another big area. Because imagine, right, today India's largest steel maker now avoids 10 hours of downtime daily by using AI. Right? And it's a very interesting example here because 10 hours daily might not sound like a big element, but for a steel producer where every minute counts for production, it's a massive, massive gain, both as a contributor to India's GDP and production output for that particular company. Right? And how do they do it? Well, imagine you're a machine operator, right, going into a particular factory. It shows you error code 302. And now what do, right? How do you solve it? So you kind of get a bunch of experts in. But now these companies have AIs that simply they talk to these AIs. They'll say, okay, error code 302, I've checked up the manual. I've also seen the last sensor data for this machine. And we know that temperatures are spiking in these 3 parts of the machine. So press these buttons, reset the sensors here, do this, and you should be good to go. Right? And that's what India's manufacturing future is going to look like. It's going to be a lot more smarter, a lot more intelligent, and less dependent on knowledge of a few. Right? It's going to literally be the democratization of knowledge. We've had brands like HPCL, which are now doing over 20 generative AI use cases across the organization, some of them powered by Fluid AI as well. And we're also seeing some great impact in governance, right, Raghav?
Yeah, so I think, till now when you looked at the government, it was like, okay, give us roads, give us electricity. But I think one of the greatest things is with the India AI mission is the government has taken up the role to say we are going to provide the GPU infrastructure, right, which is literally the beating heart of AI, to Indian startups, to Indian enterprise, and provide it at scale at a cheaper cost so that Indian startups and Indian enterprise can really take their AI innovation to the world.
Now, here's an interesting fact, right? Everyone, when they talk about AI and generative AI, they say the biggest advantage that any generative AI or AI system has is that it's always perfectly rational and lacks any kind of emotion, right? But the biggest disadvantage is, can anyone think of the biggest disadvantage that generative AI or AI has? And ironically, it is that it's always perfectly rational and lacks any kind of emotion. Right? Because finally, at the end of the day, you're dealing with emotional human beings, with people on a day-to-day basis to make their lives better. So if you don't have that key understanding of human emotion, it's a bit challenging. Now, another really interesting fact, right? A way an AI algorithm learns is by making mistakes, right? So it'll try something. So let's say we imagine an algorithm learning chess, right? Its first moves ever, like the first generation of that algorithm is going to be horrible at chess, right? It'll probably get defeated in 3 or 4 moves. And then it'll learn a little from its mistakes. And we call this concept of this making this mistake an error rate. Right? And then the error rate of the AI keeps going down as time progresses. It becomes a little better, a little smarter at what it does. And as the error rate starts to fall, the AI becomes more accurate. And ironically, the AIs that have the highest error rates in the start, they are the ones that actually perform the best in the future because they're making all their mistakes upfront. Now, when you look at your own lives and you go back, right, if you look at the biggest thing that all humans do, right? Humans also make mistakes. We also have an error rate. But when you add a little bit of emotion to the word error rate, what do you think you get? Right? Add a lot of emotion to the word error rate. And we end up getting a word which is called failure. Right? So next time you go out there and you're, failing at an exam or failing at something that you're achieving, constantly think about it as an error rate and not necessarily as a failure. And when you look at your AI implementations, right, when you go out in the world and do a lot of AI implementations, don't look at them as failures, right? They look at them as error rates that are going to constantly improve. Right? ChatGPT took 5 years to reach the stage where the first version, which is GPT-3, which is what everyone talked about, it took them 5 years to reach that, right? But the world changed. And for India to succeed at that top stage, right, is to give it time, is to be okay with a lot of failure, and not stigmatize that mistake or that time it takes. And very soon you will have India be on the top stage of generative AI.
I think agriculture, and I think that's a key area, right? It contributes so much to our economy. And that's where we see fundamental changes in terms of what AI can achieve. So if you look at what can happen out there, we're losing about 92,000 crore of crop to climate shock. But now, with the Bharat forecasting system, which is driven a lot by AI, we're looking at that number coming down massively. It just went live in May 25, and we're very excited because the accuracy levels have risen from 60 to 85%. That's a 30% drop in climate-related losses that we're seeing. And that's going to happen not just on prediction, but as a teacher as well, right? I think one of the most exciting things that are happening in terms of farmer education and farmer consulting. You have tools like Kisan GPT, which are doing with 96% accuracy. They're becoming the helpline for the farmers right when they need the information. The day is not far when each and every farmer will have their own McKinsey in their pocket, talking to them and consulting them to make India an agrarian superpower as well.
Absolutely. And we also have the whole piece. I know we had a great talk on the Bhashni project, right? And we have a ton of work that's going on the creative side as well, where these AIs are becoming smarter, more multilingual. And it's going to be this massive leveler for the Indian economy, right? Everyone keeps talking about job losses, what will happen to the Indian diaspora, what will happen to the youth. But one of the things people haven't factored in is that if you're going to have 1.4 billion people that speak diverse languages, right? More than 22 to 50 diverse languages all across. If you can now make them communicate in one unison, such that someone who speaks Tamil can speak flawless English through an AI, the amount of leveling of talent we're going to get on a global stage made available from India for the world is going to be absolutely phenomenal. And here's an example of what we wanted to show, where it's going to come in the digital space, where AIs are going to talk to you in different languages and videos. So here's a quick example of that. Again, just ask the audio.
India is one nation with many voices. Every region, every street, every home speaks a different rhythm. And now, AI avatars are learning to listen. वे सिर्फ बातें नहीं करते, बल्कि आपकी भाषा में बोलते हैं और आपके लहजे से मेल भी खा सकते हैं। তারা বুঝতে পারে কখন তুমি কৌতূহলী আর कखन শুধু शोना चाও। शिक्षकांना अधिक विद्यार्थ्यांपर्यंत पोहोचण्यास मदत करण्यापासून ते वेगवेगळ्या भाषांमध्ये स्वप्न पाहणाऱ्या निर्मात्यांना पाठिंबा देण्यापर्यंत AI अवतार लोकांची जागा घेत नाहीत. ते आपल्याला व्यक्त होण्यास, शेअर करण्यास, खोलवर जोडण्यास मदत करतात. આ માત્ર ટેકનોલોજી નથી, આ ભાવનાત્મક છે, આ માનવીય છે, આ ખરેખર ભારતીય છે. This is one India, many voices. A new era led by AI avatars.
And you're going to see them, right? You're going to see them now on Instagram. You're going to see them on YouTube. Today, someone like an Aisha Neo has about 10,000 to 12,000 followers. You have AI versions like Naina that have over 1 million followers, right? And these are completely AI generated. They talk, they look, they feel very real. And it's only going to get better and better.
And it's not just avatars, right? It can be complete books. So this was a book launched a month before ChatGPT. It's not a blog, it's not an email, it's a complete book written. So imagine the kind of creative intent, the creative energies we have. And now using AI, there can be an author literally in every village who gets those ideas, works with an AI, can release an entire book as well.
And this one's super exciting, right? And we're going to show you an advertisement generated completely by an AI. And we literally took a quote of an ad like this. It would cost about 2 crores to actually get the actors, get the sets, and build it. But this was done in about 2,500 rupees, right? And let's show you this.
Your Majesty!
The people are revolting!
The banking system has collapsed and hold times have reached 15 minutes.
Down with wait times! We demand better service!
Let them wait.
The 30-minute SLA has caught fire! What do we do? Escalate it to the monarchy!
If your support centre still looks like this, I dare say it's time for a rethink. Let's show you what the future could look like today.
Your internet banking password has been reset. Can I help you with anything else? Support doesn't have to feel like a 1790s customer revolt, with torches, scrolls, and people screaming about refunds. With the Fluid AI agentic platform, Every agent has a true assistant. This isn't just AI, it's transformation.
Fluid AI. Forget old tech. Your path to a stress-free customer support center.
Television ads were always seen as a big company thing. But imagine now the SMEs of India, the smaller companies, the smaller entrepreneurs, they can play at the big stage too, right? They can now use AI to create global scale ads, put them on a YouTube, put them on Facebook, put them in all the social media out there and get that kind of reaction. And that really unshackles our entrepreneurs because now they have the opportunity to go much beyond. But this gives us one challenge as an Indian populace. We have taught our population to learn, but now we need to let them know how to unlearn and rethink. Because AI is an opportunity, but AI is also a challenge in terms of seeing that we now need to sort of rethink a lot of the current processes we do, a lot of the current ways we operate, and really change ourselves. And it's not once. We're going to constantly have to re-evolve as a populace because that's the only way we adapt to AI.
Absolutely. And this is a really, really interesting example. It's a plane from World War I, right? There used to be a lot of these planes, and from World War II as well, that used to fly over the English Channel, do reconnaissance missions, right, in Europe, and then come back. So this is a UK-based fighter jet. And one of the things that they wanted to do or solve, right, in this particular example was they wanted to reduce, there was a bunch of data scientists in the UK that were set up as a team, and they said, let's reduce the number of planes that get gunned down and don't make it back. So they took all the planes that came back and they made like a heat map with red dots of, wherever the bullet marks or, fire marks, artillery marks were there. And they said, let's reinforce all these areas, right? So they used to have a return rate of about 60%, and each plane was very, very costly. They did all that effort, they reinforced the right areas, and then they studied 3 months of data, and the failure rate of these aeroplanes was still 60%, like only 60% return. Right? And they're like, oh, we did so much. And then someone sat in that room and realized that the mistake that they'd done was they were only studying airplanes that came back, right? So that means whenever a mark hit there, the plane survived, right? That's why it had that bullet mark or that dent in it. What they needed to study were the planes that got gunned down, right? And those were the ones that got hit everywhere where the red marks are not there. And those are the exact areas they need to reinforce. So literally do the exact opposite of what they were doing. And once they reinforced those areas, their performance return rate jumped up by 40%, right? So a phenomenal improvement for them. And the same comes when you're looking at AI, right? When you're deploying AI in your day-to-day business, in your day-to-day world. You need to look and study not just from the successes, but a lot from the failures. And today in India, we might have a slightly higher failure rate when it comes to generative AI. But that just means that if we learn correctly, we deploy it in the right enterprise use cases, and we scale it quickly, we have the whole world as our oyster up in front available for us.
So, the tin can was a very great invention in 1810. But, it's very difficult to open, right? Can anyone guess when the tin can opener came along, right? Because previous to that, it was really hard to open a tin can. So, any guesses? How long did it take for the tin can opener to be invented?
1900, okay. That's a good guess, and also very low faith on human ingenuity and innovation that it took 90 years to achieve it. Okay. So, I mean, personally, when I heard this first, I would have thought it was about 5 years, 10 years. But close guess, and really good guess, it was 1858. So it took about 48 years for mankind to develop a simple way to open a tin can, right? The first computers, when the Apple II was invented, right, where you started putting data digitally on a machine, have a screen, have a keyboard, was somewhere around 1972, 1973. It's been roughly about 40 to 50 years since that invention happened. Computers have changed in terms of form factor and methodology, but a lot has remained exactly the same since 1972, right? So is generative AI that spark, that big change, that tin can opener that's going to unlock the way we look at data, we look at digital, right? And it's not just a fad, right? It's very easy to identify. Like I know crypto became very popular and people had this reservation that, okay, nobody does real crypto transactions, right? And that technology will see its heyday. It just take 5, 10 years more. Sometimes people worry about AI, right? Generative AI. Is it just a fad? Is it just everyone getting gung-ho and excited about something? But the way to differentiate a fad and something that's going to be an industrial shift is actually very simple, right? You go home, you survey a bunch of your family members, you take a room like this and you ask people, right? How many of you use this technology daily? And does it help you in any kind of way? And if more than 70% of the room is coming up and saying yes, and I think in this room we'd probably have 90+ % that will say yes, that means it's a fundamental shift, right? That's when the iPhone came out and it changed the way screens are done. You would have the naysayers, right? You had the Nokias and the Blackberries that said tech will remain exactly the same. This is just a fad. It's going to come. It's going to go. But that's when you know that tech is going to stay, right? When schools and colleges go and try to ban the technology from saying that, okay, you can't use it when you're submitting a project, you can't use it when you're submitting an exam, that's when you genuinely know that that tech is working and it's really changing the way we work, right? So that's it from us. It's going to be an exciting time for India. I think Bharat is primed to be the generative AI capital of the world. We have the tech talent, we have the engineers, we have the infrastructure ready, and we're roaring to go and build it. And I think if India comes together, and it is coming together, it's not going to be very far from when I quoting the NPCI example at the start of my speech, that people will be quoting India's generative AI example as becoming the #1 nation in the world to build, develop foundational models, to build generative AI for enterprises, and to really deploy this tech at scale to make everyone's life a lot better. Thank you, everyone.